The Royal Military Academy Sandhurst lies nestled in the rolling hills of Berkshire, its red brick buildings steeped in history. On this crisp spring morning in 2025, the parade ground buzzes with anticipation. The graduating class stands in flawless formation, their ceremonial swords catching the sunlight, their faces set with the quiet intensity of those who know they are stepping into something larger than themselves. Families, dignitaries, and veterans fill the stands. Their voices, a low hum, beneath the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bugle. As the military band strikes up the regimental march, the crowd rises. A wave of faces turn toward the field. The music swells, precise and stirring, carrying the weight of tradition that has shaped this place for centuries. In the back row, almost invisible among the sea of spectators, sits an old man. His hair is silver, thinning at the crown, and his hands, gnarled by time, clutch a faded officer's cap, a relic of the British Army, its design obsolete, no longer issued to modern soldiers. Harold Evans, 91 years old, wears a suit that has seen better days. The lapels are frayed, the cuffs slightly worn, but it is meticulously pressed, a testament to the discipline that still governs his life. His eyes, sharp despite the years, scan the parade ground where young officers stand at attention. He is not here for himself, though Sandhurst holds fragments of his past, memories of a time when he, too, was young and full of fire. He is here for someone else. Someone who has brought him back to this place after decades. Harold's story begins long before this moment. In 1944, he was a cadet at Sandhurst, a wiry 19-year-old with dreams of leading men into battle. The world was at war, and the academy was a crucible, forging officers for a nation under siege. But Harold never walked across this parade ground in a graduation sash. Before he could complete his training, duty called him away. He joined the Royal Marines, shipping out to fight in the D-Day invasion of Normandy. The beaches were a hellscape of smoke and steel, where the roar of artillery drowned out thought, and the cries of the wounded lingered in his dreams for years. He survived, though not without cost. A shrapnel wound scarred his leg, and the weight of what he'd seen scarred his soul. He returned to England, but not to Sandhurst. The war had taken his chance at a commission, leaving him with no diploma, only stories he rarely told. "I didn't get a degree," he'd say to anyone who asked, his voice tinged with a wry humor. "I got scars." Life after the war was quiet. Harold settled in a small village, married a school teacher named Margaret, and raised 2 daughters. He worked as a mechanic, his hands always stained with grease, his evenings spent by the fire with a book or a pipe. He spoke little of the war, even to his family, but his daughters grew up knowing their father was a man of quiet strength, the kind who carried burdens without complaint. When Margaret passed away 10 years ago, Harold's world grew smaller, his days filled with routine. A walk to the village shop, a pint at the pub, a visit to the war memorial, where he'd stand in silence, remembering names no one else knew. But there was one person who drew him out, who coaxed the stories from him with wide-eyed wonder: his grandson, Thomas. From the time Thomas was old enough to listen, he would sit at Harold's knee, begging for tales of the war. Harold obliged, though he kept the darkest parts locked away. He spoke of camaraderie, of the sea crossing to Normandy, of the way the sky looked before a battle. Thomas listened, rapt, his young mind painting pictures of heroism and sacrifice. By the time he was 10, he'd declared he would follow in his grandfather's footsteps. "I'll go to Sandhurst," he told Harold, his voice firm with a child's certainty. Harold smiled, ruffled his hair, and said, "You do that, lad? But make sure you finish what I started." Thomas kept his promise. At 18, he applied to Sandhurst, passing the grueling selection process with a determination that surprised even his parents. He excelled at the academy, mastering tactics, leadership, and the intricate drills that define military life. His instructors praised his discipline, his peers admired his quiet confidence, and his letters home were filled with pride. But Thomas never forgot the man who inspired him. He wrote to Harold often, sharing stories of training exercises and asking for advice. Harold's replies, written in a careful, slanting hand, were short but thoughtful, always ending with the same line, "Make me proud, lad." Today, Thomas stands on the parade ground, a newly minted officer at 22. His uniform is immaculate, the creases sharp, the buttons polished to a mirror shine. His face is calm, but his heart races, not from the ceremony, but from what he plans to do. He has graduated with honors, one of the top cadets in his class, but he has asked for no grand celebration, no crowd of well-wishers. Only one person matters, his grandfather, sitting in the back row, clutching that old cap. The ceremony unfolds with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The commanding officer, a stern man with a chest full of medals, delivers a speech about duty, honor, and the challenges awaiting these new officers. The cadets raise their swords in unison, their oaths ringing out across the field. The crowd claps at the appointed moments, their applause polite but restrained. Then comes the commissioning, the heart of the ceremony, when each cadet steps forward to receive their officer's sword, a symbol of leadership forged in tradition. Thomas is among the last, his name called with the distinction of his honors. The announcer's voice carries across the field, Cadet Thomas Evans, with distinction. Thomas strides to the dais, his movements crisp and practiced. He accepts the sword, its weight familiar from months of drills. He salutes the reviewing officer, his hand steady, then turns to face the stands. Protocol dictates that he return to his place, but Thomas has other plans. Before the ceremony, he sought out his commanding officer, a man known for his adherence to tradition. In a quiet moment, Thomas made his request, permission to honor his grandfather with a salute, not the modern gesture, but the older, palm-down salute of the wartime era, the kind Harold would have known. The officer, moved by the request, granted it with a single condition. Make it quick, Evans, and make it mean something. Now, as the crowd watches, Thomas pauses. His head turns, not toward the dignitaries or the flag, but toward the back of the stands. His eyes find Harold, sitting alone, his cap clutched tightly in his hands. In a single, deliberate motion, Thomas raises his right hand in the old salute, his palm turned down, his gaze locked on his grandfather. It is a gesture no longer used in formal ceremonies, a relic of a time when men like Harold fought and died for a world they hoped would endure. The parade ground falls silent. The band falters, the notes hanging in the air like a held breath. Every eye follows Thomas's gaze to the old man in the back. Harold, startled, rises to his feet, his bent frame straining to stand tall. His chin lifts, and his eyes meet his grandson's. For a moment, they are alone in the world, connected by a gesture that spans decades, wars, and generations. The moment breaks the rhythm of the ceremony, but it ignites something deeper. A general, seated among the dignitaries, stands abruptly, his hand snapping to his temple in a salute of his own. His face, weathered by years of service, softens with something like awe. A ceremonial guardsman, posted at the edge of the field, lowers his head in respect, his bearskin hat casting a shadow across his face. Others follow, officers, cadets, civilians, until the entire field seems to hold its breath, caught in the gravity of this unscripted act. It is a breach of protocol, a deviation from the meticulous order of Sandhurst, but no one moves to stop it. Instead, they join it, their gestures a silent acknowledgement of a man who gave everything and asked for nothing. Harold's hands tremble as he returns the salute, his fingers brushing the brim of his old cap. His lips quiver, but he does not look away. The scars of Normandy, the weight of years, the quiet shame of never finishing what he started, all of it seems to lift, just for a moment, under the gaze of the young man who has chosen to honor him. His eyes glisten, but he holds his head high, a soldier still. Thomas holds the salute for 3 seconds, then lowers his hand and returns to his place. The ceremony resumes, but the air has changed. Whispers ripple through the stands. A few spectators wipe their eyes, their handkerchiefs clutched tightly. The commanding officer glances at Harold with a nod so subtle it might go unnoticed. But Harold sees it. For the first time in years, he feels seen, not as an old man, not as a forgotten veteran, but as a soldier who mattered. The story of that salute does not end with the ceremony. A journalist from the BBC, stationed at the event to cover the graduation, captures the moment on video. By evening, the clip is airing across the nation, shared on social media, and picked up by outlets like the Daily Mail, The Times, and The Guardian. The Mail's headline reads, "Grandfather finally gets the salute he earned." The Guardian calls it a moment of profound respect that transcends time. On X, the video spreads like wildfire, with users sharing it alongside captions like, "This is what honor looks like," and "a salute that stopped the world." Commentators on television panels dissect the moment, calling it a masterclass in respect, a reminder of the sacrifices that built the modern world. Even the stoic guardsmen of the household division, interviewed by a local reporter, speak of it with reverence. It wasn't just a salute. One says, his voice steady but emotional. It was a lesson in duty passed from one generation to the next. In the days that follow, Harold becomes an unlikely figure of public fascination. Reporters track him down at his cottage in the countryside, their cameras and microphones crowding his doorstep. He waves most of them away, uncomfortable with the attention. "I'm just an old man," he tells one persistent journalist. "The boy's the hero, not me." But the public disagrees. Letters arrive at his home, some from veterans who served in later wars, others from strangers moved by the story. A school teacher writes to say her students watched the clip in class and wrote essays about honor. A retired colonel sends a bottle of whiskey with a note to a man who earned it. Long ago, Harold agrees to speak only once at a small memorial event organized by the local Veterans Association. The village hall is packed, with people standing at the back, their faces a mix of young and old. Harold stands at the podium, his hands gripping the edges for support. His voice is frail but steady, each word chosen with care. "I didn't come to Sandhurst for me," he says. "I came for Thomas. I never thought I'd stand on that ground again. Not after all these years, but that boy, he gave me something I never thought I'd have. Today, I graduated, not because of what I did, but because he didn't forget who I was." The words are simple, but they carry the weight of a life lived in service. The audience applauds, and for a moment, Harold allows himself to bask in it. He thinks of Normandy, of the friends he lost, of the nights he spent wondering if he'd done enough. He thinks of Margaret, who would have smiled at this moment, her eyes bright with pride. And he thinks of Thomas, the boy who grew up listening to his stories, who chose to walk the same path, not out of obligation, but out of love. After the ceremony, Thomas visits his grandfather at his cottage. The house is small, its walls lined with faded photographs and mementos of a life well lived. The sword Thomas received at Sandhurst, a gleaming blade etched with the Academy's crest, lies carefully wrapped on the kitchen table. Harold assumes it's there for safekeeping, a memento of the day. But Thomas shakes his head. He pushes the sword toward his grandfather and hands him a note, written in his neat, deliberate hand. "Grandfather, keep this. You're the reason I stood there today." Harold stares at the sword, then at the note. His fingers trace the words, and for the first time in years, he weeps, not out of sorrow, but out of a quiet, overwhelming gratitude. The sword is not just a symbol of Thomas's achievement. It is a bridge between them, a testament to the bond that carried them both to that moment on the parade grounds. He tries to protest, to say the sword belongs to Thomas, but his grandson is firm. "You earned it," Thomas says, his voice soft but resolute. "You earned it long before I was born." Harold keeps the sword on a shelf above his fireplace, where it catches the light each morning. He doesn't speak of it often, but when visitors come, he points to it with a quiet pride. "That's my boy's," he says, and leaves it at that. Thomas, meanwhile, begins his career as an officer, stationed with a regiment in the north. He carries with him the lessons of Sandhurst, the weight of his grandfather's stories, and the memory of a salute that stopped time. His fellow officers, who saw the video or heard the story, treat him with a quiet respect. not just for his skill, but for the man he chose to honor. The story of Harold and Thomas becomes a quiet legend at Sandhurst. Instructors mention it to new cadets, not as a tale of glory, but as a reminder of why they serve. It is woven into the fabric of the academy, a story told in mess halls and training fields, a reminder that duty is not just about orders or battles, but about the people who carry the torch forward. For the cadets, it is a lesson in humility, in the power of small gestures to bridge the past and the present. In the village, Harold's life goes on, much as it always has. He walks to the shop each morning, stops for a pint at the pub, and visits the war memorial on Sundays. But something has shifted. The villagers, who have always known him as the quiet man with the limp, now greet him with a new warmth. Children wave as he passes, and the pub landlord refuses to let him pay for his drinks. "You've done enough," the man says, and Harold, embarrassed, mutters his thanks. At night, when the cottage is quiet, Harold sits by the fire, the sword gleaming on its shelf. He thinks of Thomas, out there in the world, carrying the weight of his commission. He thinks of the salute, of the way the parade ground fell silent, of the general who stood for him, and he thinks of the years that have passed, the battles fought, the losses endured. He wonders, sometimes, if he did enough, if his life measured up to the ideals he held as a young man. But then he looks at the sword, at the note tucked beside it, and he knows the answer. The story of Harold and Thomas is not just a moment, not just a viral clip or a headline. It is a testament to the enduring power of memory, of love, of the unspoken promises that bind generations. For Harold, it is the final chapter of a life that, in its own way, has come full circle. He never needed a diploma to prove his worth. He needed only the love of a grandson who saw him truly for who he was, a soldier, a survivor, a man who gave everything and asked for nothing in return.